Star Wars was a huge success, making millions at the box office, so there was immediate demand for a sequel, especially from 20th Century Fox, now that they knew they had a moneymaker on their hands. Normally what would happen in this case is the film's rights would be brought by the studio, and they would go on to fund something that they know will make money and interfere constantly with the production, reshaping the film into what they think it should be. However, George Lucas took a gamble and used nearly all the money he'd made from the last film to make this new one. He didn't reuse any locations or plot elements from the last film, and it paid off. The film opens on a new planet named Hoth, an ice planet covered in snow. It pretty much looks like Antarctica, but all over. All the characters we came to know and love in the last film make an immediate return. Initially we see Luke, but he's quickly captured by a Wampa. In the original cut you never get a proper look at this creature, similar to Jaws, so there's always a bit of mystery to what this creature properly looks like. And I think it was pulled off really well, and I would say it makes the creature almost more frightening because you have to imagine it. Obviously in the newer version we see the creature in full, put together with a guy in an expensive suit that also looks really good. From what I've gathered, George Lucas wanted this to be the case originally, but they couldn't do it, so they just had to do the best with what they could work with. Both versions are awesome, and it's very much a personal preference as to which one you prefer. It's a damn good scene either way. Anyway, Han realises that Luke has disappeared, so he goes out in search, and you really get an idea of just how dangerous Hoth is. Not from criminals and aggressive locals this time, but just the climate alone. Luke manages to escape through a very suspenseful moment with the Force, which leads to a scene which always bothered not only me but Mark Hamill himself. Instead of Luke just singeing some of the hair on the Wampa's arm or swiping near its feet to scare it off, he full on cuts its arm clean off, and it just seems a bit extreme. If a bear or a wolf was coming for you, you wouldn't just shoot it. Nonetheless, the scene is the way it is, and it's still a well executed moment in the film. After Han finds and saves him, they are soon forced to get as far away from Hoth as possible. When the Empire manages to infiltrate the rebel base, Luke is still a pilot, so assists in one of the coolest effects moments when taking down an AT-AT walker. Afterwards he ends up having to go to Dagobah to meet the Jedi Master who taught Obi-Wan. One of the big plot elements is the romance that builds up between Han and Leia. It was suggested that there was something in the last film, and now we see them go from fighting to finally admitting that they do have feelings for one another. I think this is done well because there's an element of comedy to it. The dialogue and responses feel true to the characters. For instance, when Leia says, "I love you" to Han, he was supposed to say, "I love you too." But Harrison Ford and the director knew this just didn't quite feel right. It didn't feel like the response Han would give. So Harrison Ford just said what came to mind, which was the famous... The effects in this film are incredible. ILM took the knowledge they'd learned from the previous film and pushed it even further. The combination of stop motion, matte paintings and miniatures pulls you into this world and forces you to believe in it. Yoda was puppeteered by Frank Oz, famous of course for his work on The Muppet Show, and you do believe in the character. He does seem old, and the expression on his face makes it clear what he's thinking. You don't ever think, oh that's a puppet, because he's handled so well. The characters are all further developed in this film. Obviously I've already touched on Han and Leia, but Luke has to change after learning what he did in the last film. We also learn that Darth Vader isn't the highest authority and works for an even more mysterious and creepy Emperor. The Emperor is Darth Vader's master, and this adds another layer to Darth Vader because now we know there's a force even greater than him, and in many ways it means you gain a bit of sympathy for him. A new character was introduced who's fairly insignificant but leaves a very strong impression, being of course the now famous Boba Fett. You never see his face and he doesn't say very much, but that raspy voice, an element of mystery, makes it clear he's someone to be feared. Lando, a friend of Han's, is introduced, giving us a bit of insight into his past. 3PO continues to add the comic relief when he's completely oblivious to what's going on and seems to have no understanding of people's emotions at very crucial moments. Yoda initially appears as this batty old alien, but then transitions into a Jedi Master once Luke learns the truth about who he is. The location of Bespin is incredible, with the city being high in the clouds with the red sky always visible. It's unlike anything we saw in the last film and reminds me more of somewhere from Star Trek than any of the locations in the last film. Clearly, having a better economy and more advanced technology, it feels the least affected by the war. Overall, there's nothing I can really say that hasn't already been said about this film. It's so beloved for good reason. It's a masterclass in filmmaking. It's a fun, well-paced, exciting adventure. George Lucas wrote a brilliant script. Irvin Kershner did a great job at taking over the director's chair. All the performances were brilliant, especially from the late James Earl Jones. This film is a masterpiece and many people's favourite film in the whole franchise, for good reason. Whilst it's not mine, it's a very close second. It's also the only one not to be heavily butchered by the special edition changes, but I still think Boba Fett's old voice was better. If you've not seen it, you must be living under the biggest rock in the world, so seriously, just watch it. Anyway, that's all I have to say about this film. I'll see you next time in whatever the next thing is I review.